Since April 27th, the WAG-Quamajuq has been featuring an exhibit called Omalluq, Pictures from My Life, featuring the drawings of the Inuit sculptor and drawer Omalluq. The exhibit features several drawings that were done by Ushutsiaq right towards the end of her life. What makes these colorful drawings so spectacular is their highly detailed depiction of everyday life on the southern tip of Baffin Island in Nunavut, and also their depiction of Inuit stories and myths that are uniquely portrayed by Ushutsiaq. These drawings offer a remarkable and beautiful insight into the lives and stories of the Inuit people. And joining me here in the Classic 107 studio to talk about Omalluq, Pictures from My Life, I am joined by Darlene Wight, who is an art historian and who is also the curator of Inuit art at the Winnipeg Art Gallery and curator for the show. Hi, Darlene. Nice to have you here.
Hello. Thank you. Nice to be here.
Mm-hmm. Before we get to the drawings, can you talk a little bit about Ushutsiaq? She was primarily known as a carver, right?
That's right. Yes, Cape Dorset is pretty well known around the world for its sculpture, stone carvings specifically. And Omalluq wanted to participate in that activity herself. Not too many women were carvers in Cape Dorset, but she started carving in the 70s, and by the mid-1980s, she was actually quite well-known worldwide. She had done a number of international exhibitions, and so she really had created a bit of a name for herself.
Mm-hmm. And can you talk a little bit about why she stopped carving and turned to drawing?
Yes, it was a bit of a tragedy, actually. She was carving outside as carvers do in Qinghai, and a dog startled her, and the grinder that she was using to carve slipped and severed a tendon in her arm, and it effectively just put an end to her carving activity.
As you said, she was from Qinghai. It's known for its carvers. In fact, I think there's a Cape Dorset calendar that the WAG sells. Why is it so well known as an Inuit carving center?
Well, people began carving in the early 50s. By that I mean carving for export, creating stone carvings that would be sent to the south for marketing. And this was one of the first places to try this as a means of employment for people who were gradually starting to move off the land and needing employment. Other forms of employment, like catching foxes for their fur, was declining. And so people began carving very early in Qinghai. And the co-op was formed in the 50s. By the late 50s, the West Baffin Eskimo Co-op was very much an art-focused co-op, and it encouraged the carvers. And they really they had a wonderful source of stone in that area, serpentinite stone deposits that were not too far from the community. And so people were able to take advantage of that. That was a really big thing that needed to be available for the carvers. And so this continued, and so over the years they've just their reputations are worldwide.
Mm-hmm. And she had members of her family that were carvers as well.
Well, actually, her mother and her father, her adopted mother and father, were both graphic artists, interestingly enough. But her adopted brothers were carvers. So everybody was an artist in the family, one way or the other. Mm-hmm.
One of the things I was reading about her, and I saw some of these sculptures, and they're really beautiful, was one of the topics that she was focused on was women giving birth. What is the significance for that for her? Do you know?
Well, I don't exactly know, but I mean, it certainly was a preoccupation. It wasn't something that most people did, women or men. That subject matter, it was a fairly personal type of subject matter, but she did it in such a way that it got the world's notice, and she did continue doing what she loved to do, and of course something that she had personal experience with, because the women, of course, would not only give birth to to their own children, but they would also help other women birth because they didn't have hospitals.
Yes, it's very different than having a child here in Winnipeg, that's for sure.
That's right.
There are 19 drawings in the exhibit, and my understanding is that you discovered them and bought them as soon as you saw them. Where did you discover them, and how did they make their way into the WAG-Quamajuq's collection?
Yes, of course, they were purchased by the co-op in Kingyte, Cape Dorset. They buy the artist's work, and then they send it to their central marketing agency, which at that time, well, even now, is in Toronto, and Dorset Fine Arts, and they wholesale the art to dealers around the world from Toronto. And so I was visiting Dorset Fine Arts, and I was just shown a drawing by Omalluq, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. And they said, well, actually, there's a few more here. Would you like to see them? And I said, absolutely. So in all, there were 19 drawings that they had. I mean, she wasn't really known for drawing, and so I guess dealers were not asking for them. And, she had only really begun drawing recently at that point. That was in 2015. And so anyway, I just said, okay, I want to take these. So I brought them back. They came to Winnipeg, and we acquired them.
Mm-hmm. For you as a curator, what drew you to them? And do you see, like, they're very detailed. Do you see different things every time you look at the drawings?
That's right. I'm still seeing things in the drawings. I mean, I've seen a lot of prints and drawings over the years, but these were different. The style was particularly meticulous. Her coloring is quite beautiful, and her compositions are really quite engaging when you look carefully at them. The distribution of the figures around her, the personal nature of the subject matter was incredible. Pieces like when she shows herself as a weeping presence over the surface grave of her husband, who had died in 2014. And so I was seeing some of the traditional stories that she was showing, but she was showing them in just very human terms, which was astonishingly exciting for me.
Mm-hmm. When I was reading about her, it struck me the drawings were done, as I understand it, like right towards the end of her life, and she almost did them as art therapy. At the time, she'd suffered some loss, as you mentioned. Her husband passed away, but her daughter sadly died as well. Is that why you think that she turned to drawing as sort of a way of working through her emotions?
Well, that may have had something to do with it. She hadn't done any art for years, since the mid-'90s when she had her accident. But Bill Ritchie was the studio manager at Kingyte in 2013. He told me that he kept bothering her. Every time he'd see her out and about, he'd say, make some drawings. And so finally in 2013, she did. She made 2 drawings and took them, and he was just blown away by them. One was a drawing of her hand, her injured hand, which she called hand injury, and one was of her daughter, Mary, who unfortunately died the same month and year that the 2 died in the same month, November 2014.
I was reading somewhere that you actually looked at one of the paintings and you actually recognized another carver that you knew in the drawing. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, I guess that's a testament to how detailed her drawings were, because I could recognize from this drawing that it was Wight who was carving outside of a house, and he was carving a muskoxen, and the muskoxen looked very, very similar to one that we have in our WAG collection by Wight. So when I put those 2 things together, I said, this has got to be Wight. This is just so amazing. And Wight, of course, is one of the best-known carvers from Kingyte. And the fact that there was a small child looking out the window at him carving spoke to me, because he he was a mentor and an inspiration to a lot of the artists from Kingite.
It's a wonderful drawing. Katrina Barska, one of your communications people from the WAG-Quamajuq, sent some pictures of the drawings. And one of them that really struck me was the one called Store Items, I remember, in the 1950s. It looks like straight ahead grocery items, but if you look at it longer, you realize all of the items are non-perishable. And you would think that they're sort of luxury items, especially getting them to Baffin Island in the 1950s. Can you talk about that drawing a bit?
Yeah, I sort of got looking at it and Googling and thinking, well, okay, so there's Fort Garry sugar. Now, it just so happens that I remember that plant it was still open actually when I moved to where I live now in Fort Garry. And I got looking into the history of that, and it began when there was concern that sugar cane would not be available during the war to make sugar. And so local farmers were encouraged to grow sugar beets. And so this plant produced sugar well into, I believe, the 1990s. I remember when it closed down. But here I'm looking at this in her drawing and realizing that it was in Cape Dorset Kingite that the sugar made its way to.
Yeah, and there's flour and candles, and there's even some gum sticks of gum in the drawing as well, right?
That's right. Yeah.
It's remarkable. One of the other drawings that drew me was the one called Drying Caribou Meat and Fish. I'm a big eater. I love to eat. And it sort of drove home the contrast of getting protein and getting meat on Baffin Island is very different than here in Winnipeg. It's not like you can go to the grocery store, get a can of tuna, and make yourself a tuna melt. It's a lot more involved. What is it about that drawing that you love so much?
Well, it was the women's task usually to process the meat. The men were the hunters. Although women still to this day, they love going out fishing. And I've been out many times with them. So fishing is sort of a woman's thing. And of course, because there's no way to refrigerate, at least in the 50s, they wouldn't have had refrigeration. So it was very important to dry the meat, and this was the women's task.
Dry it and salt it?
Well, not so much salt.
Really?
No, just dry.
Just straight dry.
Yeah, they didn't have a lot of salt.
One of the themes that she touches on are Inuit myths and legends. There's a drawing, Shaman's Transformation. She depicts a person transforming into their spirit animal, which is a bear. It's a great drawing. Can you talk about that? And what is the significance of the puzzle pieces?
Oh, I was so amazed. I mean, I have seen so many art pieces, sculpture, and drawings of transformation. It's a shamanic transformation. The shaman was able to take on the powers as well as the appearance of his or her helping spirit. And so I've seen this transformation many times, but I'd never seen anything like what Omalluq had done with she's overlaying the figure of the female shaman with a jigsaw puzzle that is in the shape of a bear, her helping spirit. So it was just such a unique way of depicting that very, very seminal part of Inuit shamanism.
Mm-hmm. And then you've got the owl and the raven. Again, a wonderful portrayal of an Inuit story. It's a remarkable drawing. Can you just describe that to our listeners?
Oh, yeah. I was amazed when I saw this drawing. I've seen artists depict this story of it's usually they're old ladies. One is an owl and one is a raven, and they're chatting back and forth. And one says to the other, or I guess the raven says to the owl, "Can I make your coat prettier? I want to put dots on it." And so she uses a brush with soot from her lamp, and she puts dots all over her. And so the owl says, okay, well, let me do for you. But the raven just kept hopping around. They're very busy birds. And so she said, keep still, keep still. And the raven just couldn't keep still. So finally, the owl, in frustration, throws all the soot from the lamp all over the raven. And that's why the raven, to this day, is black. And so I have seen that story before in other ways. But Omalluq's very unique interpretation. You only see the animals as shadows behind the two young women, two young, beautiful women. So it's really, really a unique way of showing that.
For you, what's been the most rewarding thing about discovering these drawings by Omalluq? And what are people saying about the exhibit after they've seen it?
Well, it's certainly been rewarding because when I bought them back in 2015, I was anxious to show them. But, it's not a huge show. And other things came along. And so it's taken me a while to finally be able to pull these out of storage and show them. So that has been very, very rewarding. And I think people are really reacting to these, the humanity in them, the many details of life of a woman and mother and child in some cases. So it's really you learn a lot by looking at these drawings. It's revelatory, and I think that people are reacting to that.
Yeah, they're fantastic. This has been really great, Darlene. For our listeners, can you tell them exactly where the Omalluq Pictures from My Life is in the WAG-Quamajuq?
It is actually in a mezzanine gallery above our big main large gallery in Quamajuq. It's Kizik, it's called. And so if you go up to the mezzanine, you can look down on another large show that I have in that. It's Sinanganak is down below. And you go up the stairs and you see this exhibit in the sky.
Perfect. Darlene, this has been so great, not only talking to you, but also discovering the art of Omalluq Ushutziak. Thanks so much for taking the time to stop by and talk to me today. This has just been really wonderful.
Thank you.
For our Classic 107 listeners, Omalluq Pictures from My Life is on right now and goes until March 30th, 2025. For more details on the exhibit, visit the WAG-Quamajuq's website at wag.ca or go to classic107.com. Darlene, thanks again.
Thank you.